Hey guys, it's Lauren, sitting in my car. It turns out this is just a really good time to make videos right before I go into work. So on Twitter, I don't know, a week ago, I had a conversation, insofar as Twitter is a conversation, with Laura Tempest Zakroff about beginner books, sort of. And she subsequently posted a YouTube video, which I'll link below. She does these great, they're like 6 minutes of witchcraft videos, so they're really easy to watch. They're not time consuming and they're super thoughtful. But she had initiated by saying through Twitter that, kind of in retrospect, she wasn't sure how she felt about people recommending her book, Weave the Liminal, as a first book of witchcraft. Was her book a good beginner book? And I responded by saying that I'd had an interaction recently where a retailer told me that they didn't carry my book, Traditional Wicca, A Seeker's Guide, because they already had enough beginner books, basically. So anyway, it got us both kind of wondering, like, what constitutes a beginner book? And in her video, Tempest nuances things by distinguishing between a beginner and a seeker. And she likened it in her video to architecture, where when you're a beginner, what you're doing is you're getting your tools and your blocks, and you can move your blocks in particular ways and learn how to build basic structures. But moving beyond that, the next step is building cities and neighborhoods, creating your own designs with these blocks, right? And there's different kinds of ways to kind of be exploratory. Like, being a seeker doesn't mean that you're a beginner. Being a seeker means that you have maybe an agenda in mind, a goal in mind, and you are figuring out how to get from point A to point B. It doesn't mean that you don't know what the Sabbats are. So anyway, it's an interesting conversation. But as I've been writing more and kind of working through new projects, one of the projects I'm working on, so I'm contracted for a second book, which is due here in a couple of months, and it is specifically a book about advancing practice. But I'm also writing essentially a beginner book, and I'm kind of trying to decide what to do with this beginner book and how to go about it. I mean, it's coming very easily in terms of the writing, but like, how do you market something like that in a world where people think that we don't need beginner books? Because what I've found as a coven leader, as an initiated Wiccan operating in an initiatory tradition, I don't have a beginner book that I like. When people are brand new to Wicca specifically, we're still recommending Cunningham, and I don't think that flies in 2019. If it were 1996, I think that'd be great, but it's not. And like, chapter 1 is about how Wicca is shamanism, and it just isn't. So like, I don't have a book I love. And a lot of the books that we call beginner books are really just spell books. It's like, it's not even a conversation about how magic works, because we think of that as being an advanced topic somehow. It's just a collection of like things you can do, right? Like, write your wish on bay leaves and burn them, whatever. But like, these things don't provide sufficient introductions in and of themselves. And it got me thinking a lot about how I learned initially, and I think this is true. I think this is still true for most of us. It was certainly true for those of us who got started in the 90s and early 2000s. There really wasn't a singular source. It's not like you read one book and bam, you were a witch. You read a lot of things. You pulled from a lot of sources. I can remember I think the first book I ever read was Teen Witch by Silver Ravenwolf, but I was really reading multiple books simultaneously, and I read Wicca for the Solitary Practitioner by Scott Cunningham, and on the heels of that, To Ride a Silver Broomstick, Silver Ravenwolf. I remember reading Wicca, The Complete Craft by DJ Conway. I mean, I was really kind of like swallowing as much as I could as quickly as possible. So all of those things combined to give me my beginning Wicca / witchcraft introduction, because those words weren't used the same way that we use them today. And it wasn't a single source. They were all saying comparable things for the most part, and I think that's still true. Books tend to say comparable things. So it's tricky, but like if it just comes down to recommending one book, which one do you pick? And anyway, Tempest was kind of saying that like, because her book doesn't give people, you know, those basic building blocks. It assumes a certain level of familiarity. It's about a particular kind of witchcraft. You know, how does this stack up to beginner books? And thinking about my own, so Traditional Wicca, A Seeker's Guide, which you can buy on Amazon, blah, blah, blah. It's not an intro to Wicca book. I think the negative reviews that I have received about that book, and thankfully there haven't been many, but the ones that I have received have said that basically like they were expecting more about what Wiccans do and Wiccan history and that kind of stuff. And I assume those things in the book. I mean, I don't tell you what a Sabbat is or what an Athame is or what they do or what a ritual looks like. I don't talk about how magic works. I don't do any of that stuff because I assume that the reader already knows. In my mind, somebody who's seeking traditional Wicca has been practicing Wicca for a number of years and is now looking to do something specific with that practice. They're interested in taking it a step further, seeing what else is out there, or else they're interested in seeing how operating in a coven changes that practice, and how to go about taking initial steps on that path. So is that introductory material? Well, I mean, it's an introduction to a specific group of traditions, but it's not an intro to Wicca. So it's weird to me when people refer to it as a beginner's book. I mean, there's an entire chapter on like Van Gennep and liminality and how initiation functions in religious groups. And like, I've never seen that in an intro to witchcraft book. So like, it's an odd thing. But yeah, anyway, just kind of like thinking broadly about what kinds of things go in a beginner's book, and do we need more of them? Do we need different ones? I think we do. Just because there isn't a single text out there. Like, if you trusted that the person you were recommending it to was only going to read one book, which book would you pick? And I feel like it's always a compromise between, well, this author's history is completely wrong, but at least they're not a racist about it or something. Or like, this author has, you know, an amazing writing style and is really easy to understand, but they're only talking about witchcraft from one angle and they misrepresent other traditions. Like, there's just always a compromise. Nobody seems to be able to get the balance right. So anyway, like my MO very selfishly is writing a book that I can recommend to people who approach me so that I know exactly what it is that they're reading. You know, like the whole reason I wrote Traditional Wicca, A Seeker's Guide was so that I potentially had fewer emails to answer. Like, it was sort of a gift to my own like traditional Wiccan community of high priests and high priestesses, where it's like, here, hopefully people will read this and ask you better questions and send you fewer emails. Like, that was kind of the impetus behind the book. And I want to do something similar with a beginner's book, where I don't have to worry if the history is bad, or if, you know, somebody says something just like moronic about Gardnerians or something like. Anyway, that's something on my brain right now. It's also been interesting writing. I hesitate to call it an advanced book because I don't feel like that's necessarily a thing either. And I've made videos about choosing advanced books and what that means exactly. It's an advancing book. It's about kind of what to do when you hit walls. And it's not really dependent on levels. I'm talking to people who are overwhelmed beginners as much as I'm talking to people who are dealing with burnout and plateaus. So anyway, that's been an interesting process too, because it raises questions about, well, what do people mean when they say that they want advanced material? What exactly is that? And frequently that entails asking people to think differently about stuff that they already know. It's not necessarily about learning new stuff. Anyway, that's all. I should go into work, but I hope you all are well. And if you've got a favorite beginner book, one that you trust, you should put it in the comments below. Hopefully, like, pick something other than Scott Cunningham. Just because we all know, everybody's read that at this point. Like, what do you recommend now? Is there anything that's come out recently? Particularly pertaining to Wicca, just because I feel like there are, I don't know. Never mind, I'm not going to say that because I don't know that it's true. But yeah, leave me your books below. Hope you guys have a good day.